Hello everybody, welcome back to another video, and we have another album review for Kendrick Lamar. He's headlining Lollapalooza this week, and I am headed there in a couple of days, so I figured, we would review probably one of my favorite Kendrick Lamar albums, and I know he has a lot of good ones, but Section 80, it's up there, man. This is one of my favorite albums. This is his first full-length project. The title kind of refers to Section 8 housing in the 80s, the time Kendrick kind of grew up in. Lots of topics to get into on this album, things like racism, the effects of the Reagan administration, female issues, drug abuse, and government theories. There was actually a track that was removed from streaming, so we won't talk about it. I can't remember what the song was called, but there's a lot of awesome lyrics on this thing. But, obviously a pretty loose concept, but still a great Kendrick album. So let's get into the tracks. We go track by track. You guys know how this is going to go. This probably won't be as long of a video, if I had to guess, as the Damn review, because there was a lot more to kind of dive in conceptually on that album. But, this one isn't as consistent in its message, but let's go. So track 1 is Fuck Your Ethnicity, and this is the opening song on the album, and this is where these two fictional characters that we'll hear about throughout the album, Keisha and Tammy, are introduced. It's kind of a track about races. You can kind of get that from the title, and obviously Kendrick throughout his career has liked to talk a lot about racial issues, and I think, obviously we had Overly Dedicated, but this is the first album where he really talked about those type of issues. He welcomes anyone in this fan base, any color, sexuality, anything. It's not even just about ethnicity. It's like, whoever the fuck you are, I'm going to accept you into my fan base. Anyone can listen to my music. This is for everybody. Recent messages might not have said that, but yeah. Moving on to recent tracks on Mr. Morale. But moving on to track number 2, Hold Up, probably one of the most iconic songs on the album. It tells a story of meeting an attractive stewardess on a plane. This is one of the more specific tracks. It's almost like it actually happened to him. Now, I don't know, I haven't really seen any interviews of him saying this actually happened to him, but it's pretty plausible, seeing a very attractive stewardess on the plane. And a lot of people are saying she's a metaphor for hip-hop. That's kind of the message, he's fucking her in front of everyone, and Kendrick's fucking up hip-hop in front of everyone's eyes and ears, I guess you could say. It's kind of a crazy one. So he ends up meeting and sleeping with her. The rapping here is awesome. Very entertaining track from Kendrick. Moving on to track number 3, ADHD. Everyone knows this track damn near. It was on the GTA radio. Obviously, it was all over regular radios all around the country and even the world. Yeah, this is a pretty iconic song. And yeah, it's popular and people are going to have this agenda or narrative that oh my god, it's not that good because it's popular and everyone listens to it it's not even cool anymore. But it's aged really well for me. So legendary. This is probably one of his best songs. So many memories listening to this track back in the day. I sound like a damn old head, but I'm only 20 years old. But it's more of a drug-themed track. There's an awesome sample on here as well. This is such a sick song. Such a groove. The flows are so unique. You haven't really heard a rapper rap like this on a project damn near ever. So Kendrick definitely brings a lot with that song. Such an enjoyable song. When you hear of his Dr. Dre inspiration, this is one of the examples early on in his career, I would say. So moving on to track number 4 is No Makeup. I'm not going to read everything in the parentheses. I know there's multiple titles to the songs, but No Makeup is a song about one of the characters, Keisha. He's on the song, not even just the Keisha character, but he's trying to get girls to get over their insecurities as a whole of having to wear makeup to look good. He's trying to boost some confidence for some of these females. Makeup kind of represents drugs in a way. You can kind of see that through his words in the song. Something you have to go on with your life. That's kind of the similarities between makeup and drugs. And that's crazy. No other rapper has really drawn that connection but Kendrick Lamar on this song. Yeah, it's such a powerful song. I don't think I've heard any other rapper talk about makeup on women. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you guys can give me some examples in the comments, but yeah. The next song, track number 5, is Tammy's song. He's kind of using this Tammy character to explain how relationships can go cold, they can turn toxic, there can be a lot of turmoil. And yeah, he's telling it through the point of view of Tammy, and I think Keisha was on the track. So the two characters on this album, Tammy and Keisha, eventually connect with each other on the song over their relationships. They can kind of relate to each other, and they almost form a lesbian relationship off of this connection. There's a great like C Murda interpolation for the chorus, which is awesome. Sounds great. Moving on to track 6, which is chapter 6. And any of the tracks on this album with chapter in the title is most likely going to be an interlude, and that's exactly what this is. It's an interlude on the album leading into the song Ronald Reagan era. The opening skit continues here and will continue to, on another song. Like, it presents itself, there's this whole thing where they're like gathering around the fire, and Kendrick Lamar as a narrator and like his dark voice is kind of telling them some things about the album and like, have you learned anything from this? And when you're listening to this as a music fan, you kind of do learn a lot from Kendrick here. Kendrick is a very smart man. He talks about a lot of conscious things that not a lot of ordinary people would think about. So moving on into track 7 is Ronald Reagan Era. One of the best songs on here. Ronald Reagan Era, any song with like Ash Riser on it is amazing. The song explains how Compton is a sort of like dystopian atmosphere. Like, there's a lot of fucked up things that happen there. It's kind of survival of the fittest, a very dark place where no one really gives a fuck about outside of it. He's kind of explaining how he's good with all of the gangs. Obviously the crack epidemic happened during the Reagan administration, which is why Ronald is mentioned so much on this album, because the 80s was when his administration happened, and it's kind of when Kendrick Lamar grew up and he experienced the effects of the Reagan administration. This time in America really affected Kendrick, the crack epidemic, and this is kind of Kendrick's attempt of taking us through that time, like reliving those times, what it was like, what everyday life was like. As we get into the next song, track 8 is Poe Man's Dreams. It kind of has a double meaning. Edgar Allan Poe, who supposedly died due to alcohol, which is a vice, which is like another drug, and that's interesting. And, the South's pronunciation of poor being Poe, you know what I mean? So Kendrick's realistic raps kind of go along with how Edgar used to write stories. He doesn't like to sugarcoat shit, and neither did Edgar Allan Poe. Kendrick and Edgar can kind of connect on that point, and that's kind of what the title means. It's a song about, peer pressure and bad habits. It kind of sounds like Kanye West's Spaceship off of college graduation or late registration. I don't remember which one. It's kind of a sad vibe, very mellowed out and like stoner type of record. As we move on to track 10, which is chapter 10, another interlude with a recurring skit throughout the album. There's not really much to say about it. It's a little over a minute long, so I think it's safe to say that we can move on into the next track, track 11, which is Keisha's song. This is one of the best songs on the album as well. The sample is great. The message, the flows, oh my god, Keisha's song is amazing. Fancy girls on a beach, man. Ash Riser does amazing, and the vocal performances are top of the line. This is a song to try to like push his sister in the right direction. He actually originally wrote it for her. Prostitutes are discussed here. How they go through a lot of pain on the job, but they have to make ends meet. He understands that some women feel the need to be prostitutes, but he's trying to urge his sister not to fall victim to that trap and to try and make a different living for herself. This seems like a more mature cut for him, for sure. Like early on in his career, one of the more developed songs that we would hear on albums like GKMC and T-Pab. But great song. Amazing song. Next is Rigor Mortis, which is track 12. It's kind of just about killing his competition, more of like the braggadocious murder rap, horrorcore rap songs on the album. Such a cold-blooded, dope song from Kendrick as well. Definitely a highlight on the track list. You love the sample, that jazzy like bam 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 bam. It sounds amazing. This is like his rap god. Like, he goes in here. It's awesome. And obviously, like, Rap God didn't come out when this song came out, so that's interesting. But yeah, it's awesome. You get Kush and Corinthians, which is kind of about being moral and dealing with the temptations of vices and like not getting dissuaded. Paul's letters have a lot to do with this song from the Bible, from the Corinthians. BJ the Chicago Kid had a follow-up record to this on this album. It's okay. The song kind of wanes, but it's one of the weaker songs on the album, in my opinion. Moving on to Blow My High, it pays homage to the late Aaliyah. I'm kind of going quicker here because this video is taking a little too long. A lot of samples and whatnot to pay homage to this time where like Aaliyah was doing big things. Like Pimp C was going crazy, Jay-Z, all those people. This is a banger. It's like an aux jam. Like, it's the aux jam of the album. If you're in the car with a bunch of people that are wanting to like listen to some West Coast shit, like this is it right here. Blow my high. Absol's outro. Absol kind of wraps up what Kendrick says on this album and adds his own thoughts. This is kind of like the summary of the album, like put into a sort of Absol track, if you will. Kendrick wants people to know that this is his opinion and is his interpretation, and if you disagree with it, it is what it is. Music, helps him find the truth. He kind of discussed that through a lot of his songs. I don't care for this song, but it's got a good message and it's kind of necessary. Then we get to kind of like a bonus cut, which is High Power. Such a powerful, dope song to close it out, kind of talking about self-enlightenment, self-power, pushing yourself to the highest, kind of reflecting on himself. Obviously, a lot of racial topics here. I think the High Power does represent some sort of racial protest, maybe, but this term has a big meaning in his music. The High Power means a lot to Kendrick. I don't know how many times in his career or discography he's mentioned it, but yeah. J. Cole produced this as well, which is insane and something I didn't learn about until I listened to this album. So with that, let's get into my formal review of the record. So getting into some closing thoughts, this won't be a really long part of the video. The production on this album is insane. The raw instrumentation is great. That's one big thing. It's got that classic West Coast sound to it with amazing samples, amazing vocalist. It's just a dope album overall. It's interesting because this album came out before he blew, so some of the lyrics are like kind of insane to listen to and to kind of hear his young perspective as an up-and-coming rapper. It's a very underrated record from Kendrick, I will say that. This is super duper underrated, but I don't really have much to say. Leave a like, comment, subscribe. I don't think this is as good as Damn. I used to hold this in pretty high regard. It's not that it grew off me, it's just that I listened to his other projects. I think it's better than his most recent album, maybe by a tad, but yeah, it's still a great installment in his discography, especially for being this early in his career. So yeah, I'm out, guys. Have a good rest of your day. I'm going to enjoy Lollapalooza here in a couple of days, so yeah, can't wait for him to perform maybe some of these cuts, although it is kind of a stretch. I know he's going to be performing some Damn songs, some tracks from his most recent album, definitely T-Pab, but yeah, it'd be cool to listen to some songs from here as well, so I'm out, guys.